The next special application is one that's very near and dear to my heart and our organization's heart, if you will. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning, our nonprofit organization, all of our activity is organized under one nonprofit. So we manufacture as a nonprofit, we distribute as a nonprofit, we're solar contractors and solar integrators as a nonprofit. And the reason that we organize as a nonprofit is because we wanted to make solar energy accessible to low-income families when we started in 2000. And the reason we wanted to do so is because we wanted to see solar thermal be used to address chronic fuel poverty. How many of you have heard of that term before? Okay, just a handful of you. It's a term, or I should say it's a societal issue that's not really on the societal radar. Very few people realize that hundreds of thousands of Minnesota families have to make some very tough choices every single heating season. And actually tens of millions of Americans have to make similar choices. If you have to choose between heating and any other basic necessity, you're living in fuel poverty. So when you have to choose between, gosh, do I dial the thermostat down to 60 to make sure I can pay my health care bill? If you have to choose between turning that thermostat down to 58 so I can put food on the table or get to and from work, when you're making those choices, or in the most extreme cases, between heat and eat, you're living in fuel poverty. And believe it or not, there are a lot of people that are living in fuel poverty. So we wanted to use solar thermal to address this particular issue. This graph is a really interesting graph. Now bear with me as I walk through this because it illustrates kind of a dark reality of fossil fuel dependency, which is that fossil fuel dependency and energy crises have a disproportionate impact on our low-income neighbors. Energy crises have a disproportionate impact on low-income communities. The less money you make, the greater percentage of your income you have to devote to the basic necessities of heat and power. So if, for example, you're living at poverty or below poverty, you can potentially spend up to half of all your income on heat and power. So again, if you're a single parent, for example, and you're raising a couple kids, and propane goes up 5%, you can very easily find yourself in fuel poverty. On the opposite side of the continuum, if you're on a fixed income and gas goes up, which of course it hasn't recently, but if it were and you're on a fixed income, you can easily find yourself living in fuel poverty. So fuel poverty is something that's a lot closer to a lot of us than we realize. Fortunately, there is a federal program that helps low-income families weather the storm of winter heating, but it's a bit of a broken system. Every single year, we pay about $100 million a year to help low-income families weather the storm of the heating season. And that's only serving a portion of the eligible population, and it's really only applying a Band-Aid on a wound in need of a tourniquet. We are hemorrhaging cash to apply a temporary solution to low-income fuel poverty. And it really begs the question whether or not we're going to be able to do this in the future because, of course, we all realize that fossil fuels are a finite resource, which means heating costs are going up, which means the number of families that need the service is also going up. So it's a perfect storm for energy assistance. And energy assistance is a critical social safety net, and this really begs the question whether or not we're going to be able to continue to provide this service in the future. I grew up in a family that was dependent on energy assistance year in and year out. We got the money, we appreciated it, it did nothing to address the root causes of our fuel poverty. We think that solar energy has a very important role to play within the energy assistance program. How many of you know what energy assistance is? How many of you have heard of it? So the typical energy assistance family in the upper Midwest gets about 12 to 18% of their heating bill paid for by the energy assistance program. It's a very important social service, helps kids remain healthy, helps families remain healthy, but we're not sure if we can continue to do this at the rate of $100 million a year just in Minnesota. Guess what it is in Wisconsin? It's about $100 million. Every single state in the union gets an energy assistance grant, every single year. Hawaii, Florida, Alaska, Maine, Montana. If you do the math, that's a lot of money that we're spending annually. And it really begs the question, is there another way to go about this? We think that incorporating solar thermal systems, simple residential solar thermal systems, into the Energy Assistance and Weatherization Program is a much wiser use of public money. And it's also a longer-term solution. So again, 12 to 18% is the typical energy assistance budget for a typical family. We're providing about 15 to 35% of a household's energy with a small residential solar thermal system. So what's the takeaway? A lot of families don't need energy assistance any longer. A lot of families that we've had the opportunity to work with don't need energy assistance any longer because they have their own means to provide their own heat. So although energy assistance is an important social service, it's not actually empowering families. It's actually creating a dependency. Whereas solar thermal can help families stand on their own 2 feet and provide their own heat. So here's some examples of our solar thermal systems. One of the things I want to point out is that energy assistance has broad support on Capitol Hill. It's not a partisan issue at all. Why? Well, look, before you answer that question, when we received our energy assistance stipend growing up, did we see the cash? Didn't cross our table. My parents never saw it. Who did? Centerpoint, Excel, Minnesota Energy Resources, your co-op. Energy assistance has broad bipartisan support. Why? It's another fossil fuel subsidy. A solution may not even be the intention. So again, we think that using solar thermal to address fuel poverty is another underutilized application with solar thermal. And it's one that can benefit families, it's one that can benefit regional energy security, and it's one that can benefit the environment tremendously. Now, of course, everyone wants to know what the return on investment is. And we can speak to that with a great deal of specificity. We can model our systems and data log our systems and BTU meter our systems and tell you a lot about what they're doing. But what's the return on investment for conventional energy assistance outside of the social return? None. There's absolutely no return on investment. I mean, granted, it's an important social service that we need to maintain, but there is no return on investment from a typical conventional accounting perspective. None. And speaking of data logging, I just wanted to show you an example of a couple solar assistance installations so you can see what they are actually doing for families. We're typically seeing about 9 to 10 million BTUs produced, but a great deal more saved. Why? Let's say, for example, in this household, they have a fuel oil furnace with an efficiency of about 60 to 65%. Although the system is delivering about 10 million BTUs per heating season, the savings, of course, are much more substantial because we're offsetting an appliance that's not nearly 100% efficient. So this application of solar thermal is novel. There's really no one else in the nation that has started to incorporate solar thermal into the low-income energy assistance and weatherization program and into affordable housing. Here's another example of a solar assistance installation. And here again, we're providing about, let's see, what's this one doing? About 13 million BTUs over the course of the heating season. And again, this is providing true empowerment to families as opposed to conventional energy assistance. The state of Minnesota has been extremely supportive of this concept. And a lot of other states now are starting to turn to Minnesota and identify this model of using solar thermal to address low-income fuel poverty as the Minnesota model. Now, it's no Academy Award, but the state actually won the National Weatherization Award. How many of you have heard of that? Because they supported this concept. When we started our organization in 2000, we went right to the Department of Commerce and said, you know what, we think we have a novel idea. Let's incorporate solar thermal into the Energy Assistance Program. They said, that's interesting, good luck, see you later. Can't spend a dime of energy assistance money on renewable energy. In 2006, that changed. Now the entire weatherization community throughout the nation has the authority, has the blessing of the Department of Energy to use weatherization dollars for solar. So this can be something that is replicated across the nation. Now, not only are we empowering families, not only are we providing an energy assistance solution, but we're also obviously reducing greenhouse gas emissions dramatically. So a typical residential solar assistance installation on a weighted average, reduces about a little more than a half a ton of carbon dioxide per year. If we're offsetting electricity, however, it's substantially more. Where does the vast majority of our electricity come from in Minnesota? Coal-fired electrical generation. What's the typical efficiency of a coal-fired power plant in the United States? What's that?
33%.
33%. The coal-fired power plant north of the Twin Cities in Becker, the Sherco power plant, provides a lot of electrical energy for the metro area. Fill in the blank. 30,000 tons of coal delivered per day. 30,000 tons of coal delivered per day. Now, at 33%, only 10,000 tons are actually being converted into electrical energy. The rest is wasted heat and pollution. So if we're offsetting electricity, obviously it's substantially more savings. So again, we just want to point out that using solar thermal as part of the Energy Assistance Program is a great model. It's very effective. And by the way, what is propane going to cost in the future? More. That's the only thing we know. So for all renewable energy technologies, one of the major advantages is the hedge against energy insecurity, the ability to stabilize our energy cost, to lock in at a particular rate. When we deploy a solar thermal system for a low-income family or a commercial client, we know what every BTU is going to cost for the lifespan of that system. That's not true for any conventional fossil fuel-based energy system. Now, like I said, the state of Minnesota has really seen the value of this program. A lot of other states now are starting to turn to Minnesota to see how they can do this as well. And when I say Minnesota, I basically mean our collaboration with Minnesota. Right now we're doing a total of 300 low-income installations across the state with 9 different community action agencies. Community action agencies are kind of at the grassroots level, at ground zero for delivering energy assistance and weatherization. So we're training 9 community action agencies to deploy solar thermal for low-income families. And when this project is done, we'll have about 300 installed. We've done installations in Wisconsin, both of the Dakotas, Indiana, Illinois, Maine, Montana. And a lot of other states now are saying, we too want to incorporate solar air heat into the Energy Assistance Program.